All right, welcome, welcome. We are live for a Better Call Saul episode. And here with me today is Saul. And Saul, I figured out a great way to introduce you finally. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Here we go. Saul is real estate's first internet and tech evangelist, the co-founder of the Data Advocate website, and also of Realtown Real Estate Network Facebook group.
You got it.
Yeah.
Excellent.
That's better. And then Rachael Real, also, who is the broker owner of Rachael Real Estate in Chicago. Good morning.
Morning, everybody.
Morning. Hey, let me add something to that. What if you're going to do definition or an introduction like that? I also was the creator of ePro, which is the National Association of Realtors Technology Certification Program.
Oh, nice. I feel like if we wrote down everything that you created or made better, it would be like
we need like a ream of paper.
Exactly.
Well, the ePro one was one of my favorites because I'm a real estate educator,
Right.
and a real estate trainer, and so the ultimate would be to get a certification, one of your courses certified by NAR, and get NAR's endorsement to market it. So that was a big thing for John and Mike Barnett and myself. I think, when did we do that? 2002, 2000,
Long time ago.
2001, 2000. We had a 10-year contract. So
was it? Has it been changed at all since then?
Oh, I'm sure it's been changed dramatically. We
actually I was going to say,
right. So 2001, when we created the course, it had stuff that now everybody does naturally. And then we created something called, before anybody else, we created a course we called for ePro. It was an advanced ePro course. We called it Web 2.0, because you might recall that that's what they called the interactive web. The things that we do today on the web, that's not what you did on the web 15 years ago.
No, you played Oregon Trail on the web. 15
years it was read only. Stuff would go up, but it was read only. You could read it, but you couldn't contribute, right? Unless you knew how to program, if you're, HTML. And so, it's changed dramatically. I'm sure the ePro course has been updated many times since we dropped that contract with NAR in 2010.
Yeah, cool. Well, today, what we want to talk about, and we posted it on our Facebook page, we got a ton of interaction, but we want to talk about one of the biggest complaints in our real estate, in our industry, real estate, is customer service. So we were thinking, what is the one thing that we could change to increase the level of customer service? And we got so many responses.
We did.
Yes. So the top one was to have, and I swear that I did not pay people.
You didn't pay people to.
But they had
any of their comments.
I know, right? They had said a type of pre-licensing, and some people even use the word apprenticeship training was the number one answer. I mean, Saul, you're a trainer, and I would argue there's a ton of training.
There's a ton of training. It's not an issue of training.
I think it's more of an issue of
available. There's plenty. So it is an apprenticeship. The way it's set up from a license perspective is apprenticeship. You can't go out in business as a sales licensee. You can only go out in the real estate business if you're a broker. And then one of the things you can do, you can hire salespeople. Well, if a salespeople person has to work for a broker, what are you going to call them? I would call them
right. You could argue that would be an apprenticeship, right? Because you can't just go right out and get that broker license. I think the bigger term here, the more appropriate term, is agents dialing in and taking advantage of those things and making it their focus instead of it being a side hustle or it's something that they do in the evenings and weekends outside of their other job, whatever that might be.
Well, here's something else that this is a whole nother subject. Is I don't believe that there's part-time real estate. I believe that you do it, whatever hours you devote to it.
Right.
It's full-time. You can have 5 other jobs, but if you're selling real estate for that period, you're selling real estate. Right. And I've never seen anything that compares one realtor to another. So somebody who might have been in the business for 15 years and done a lot of transactions might be a bum.
Yeah, I don't think length of time does not equate to higher or lower customer service. Neither does part-time versus full-time, but the second highest one was to have higher standards to enter the field and also standards for getting people out of the field.
Yeah, well,
but I
that's
don't know, would
interesting.
that lead to higher customer service?
I'm not, so what was the first piece? More
Just
people.
like higher standards to get into the field.
Higher standard. Here's the issue with that. First of all, there has to be there never was a standard until license law was created.
Okay.
So anybody could go out and list and sell real estate, and boy, you talk about a bad reputation. People that sold real estate, they were really hustlers.
Yeah, but that's how it is in like a lot of parts of the country.
Oh,
you
in the
need
world,
a license or anything. Yeah, I mean,
no,
not
no,
the country, in the world. Yeah,
in the world, in the country. Now, so what happened is these licensing laws came up, and they're all state jurisdiction. And so prior to license law, there was no consumer protection. Anybody could go out and do it, and it generally attracted folks who wanted to buy, their dealers. Go out and buy and sell. And then so the license law came in to kind of clean that up. So license law really is kind of like a monopoly. You can go out and sell real estate if you pass the exam and you go to work for, you apprentice, you go to work for a broker. And so that's been around for a long time now. And different states have different rules about this, but they're all kind of similar. In that there's basically two license requirements, an exception to this in some facilitator states, right? But basically two licenses, broker license, sales license.
Right.
To be a broker, it's a little bit more extensive, a little bit more training, a little bit more background. And then when you get that license, you can hire people to work for you to sell real estate. Right?
Yeah, but I don't think that, I mean, I don't think any of that leads to like higher customer service necessarily either.
No, well, I don't think it does. So here's the thing, I've seen this for years. Realtors complain about realtor customer service more than anybody does.
Right.
I mean, you go out there and look at the consumers, while everybody bitches and moans about realtors, the fact is you don't see a lot of bad actors. You see some, but pretty much people are kind of satisfied with the service they get. The people that are most aggravated by the poor customer service are realtors themselves. People don't call them back, or they don't leave business cards at the open house, or they leave the burden of the entire transaction on the listing agent or on the buying, right? All these different, so it's the realtors who complain about the realtors. And so we were having this conversation because people have all kinds of ideas how to clear it up. But we said, here's the issue. If you really want to have a conversation about it, make people give you one thing.
It was hard.
It makes them think then, right? People have to think about it.
You have to boil that down to just one.
Boil it down to one thing.
I don't think it can be one, because I don't think there's only one thing that's like the problem that's leading to that.
Well, I think it's one thing.
I know you do.
Actually, I think it's two things. I think it's two things. I think number one, it's the fact that there is no consistency in the level of service delivered in the real estate industry.
Okay.
And I see that as a huge problem.
That's a huge problem. And so how do you get people to take and be accountable? And then there's this other issue I hear every once in a while about dual agency. You ever heard that argument? That you shouldn't be able to represent both sides in a transaction because that's detrimental. And then I think there's such a wide disparity of skill of real estate licensees. I guarantee you that I could go out and find one person that could handle both sides of the transaction that would be better than two incompetent people.
Oh, yeah, I could find
I can go out and the listing agent can be incompetent. I could find a buyer incompetent. So I got two incompetent, but I've got somebody representing me. And so how do we get some consistency in who is allowed to sell beyond the state exam? And I think that's, if you really think about it for a while, brokers will hire anybody.
Yeah, I think that's the problem. I mean, and we did a Real Estate Fight Club podcast episode on this, is like, do we even need brokers? Because that's the whole problem. The brokers, their goal is to hire the most amount of agents, and as real estate agents, our goal is to help our clients usually.
That should be the brokers. Actually, the broker's the agent. The licensee really works for the broker, right?
Yeah,
they're using the broker's license.
Right. Okay.
So if you look at what could you do to change it, you got to make somebody accountable for the training. Because what we're saying is we're not doing enough things to make sure that the customer service is satisfactory to people that are listing and selling, and also to the consumer. So what can we do? Let's make somebody accountable for the people who get hired to interface with the consumer. And the only way you do that is to make the sales licensee an employee of the
No.
broker. So if you made them an employee, now all of a sudden the broker's got skin in the game. The broker doesn't have as much skin in the game if he can just hire anybody, she can just hire anybody,
Right.
give them a desk, give them a telephone, and if they're successful, great. And if they're not,
Yeah,
in
but
3
I
or
don't
4 years,
think,
they'll go find something else to do.
and that was the third most popular answer, is to make people have licensees or whatever be employees instead of independent contractors. But I actually don't think that would work either. I mean, look at the number of employees anywhere. First of all, they're not the same. Like, you can go to McDonald's and all the employees that are working there are like not the same. You can go to a car, to buy a car, all those people, well, they're not employees either.
And I would say, right. I mean, you're not going to have autonomous people, that are working in one place that are going to be exactly the same. However, prior to real estate, I worked for a large industrial supply company. And I will tell you that the amount of training that they did and how they trained people led to any customer could call that call center to place an order, and they would get exactly the same experience every single time. It's like when you go, do you guys have Chick-fil-A?
Yeah.
Where you're at? Okay. So
that's what we should do. Have the Chick-fil-A people train everybody.
they
do something.
Their training is fantastic. Their training is fantastic.
A broker hires an agent, hires agents,
okay,
and then those that aren't any good wash out.
I just don't think they do.
Well, no, so let's just assume that some do and some don't. So what does the broker then do? Hires more people.
Right.
And then it doesn't matter how many transactions they have. If the broker will let them hang around for a long time, as long as they don't take up a lot of space.
It's like impossible. It's harder to fire a real estate agent than it is to fire somebody in the IRS.
Yes, that's true. I mean, if you look at the fact that the reason a broker hires an agent is to collect monthly fees. I mean, there's no way around it. If they're going to keep dead weight as long as they can, as long as they're getting a couple bucks every month for overseeing no transactions. So the brokerage itself and that managing broker doesn't have any reason to put any more into it if they're collecting the money that they want to collect. Their business model, that brokerage's business model, is to bring agents in. That's where their money's coming from. They don't care if you sell nothing.
So if you wanted to, that's right. So people can hang on. People with little experience to no experience.
Exactly.
It doesn't cost the broker anything to keep them around. If it cost them something to keep them around, they'd be more diligent in making sure that
making a good hiring decision to begin with.
I don't know though, because you still have a lot of other problems. So you still have that the barrier to entry is so low. You're going to have all these people that have to go somewhere.
No, I don't think so. Not they have to be employees. You have to find somebody to hire you. Right. So if you, that is barrier to entry, no barrier to entry. If I'm a broker and I want to hire people,
okay,
if I don't have to pay for them, I'm not as concerned in their productivity and their production. But if I have to pay for them, I'm going to be more careful about it.
Okay.
Right. You're going to be a little more diligent. You're going to take some more time.
But there are brokerages out there that have employees. And
there's a few.
There's a couple. So like with those brokerages, I would be wondering if their level of customer service is higher, because in my dealings with them, it has not been.
It's going to take time for that to work out. Back a long time ago, the banks tried to get into real estate. And in my mind, that was probably one of the best things that could have happened to the real estate industry. But realtors fought it and were successful in pushing it off. And the reason that I like the idea is because banks have a deep enough pocket. If you want to change this business model in real estate, if you want more competent people, you got to put somebody in charge. The broker. Now, technically the broker's in charge, but there's no penalty for having people who aren't, right? There's no penalty. So if I had to hire somebody and make sure that they earned a minimum wage, either through commission or through things that they did, then I'd be more careful in them and what they did. And fewer people who are unsupervised. See, that's an issue.
Can we define
supervision's a huge issue?
Maybe we should define though, like, what does a higher level of customer service mean? What does it look like?
I don't know that I almost look at it as in two different ways. I see the word customer services as the idea that you're looking at But I think really what we're looking at is agents who are making real estate a priority and making sure that they know what they're doing when they go out and service a client. So you can be great going through the motions of customer service, communication, phone calls, follow up, this and that and the other thing. However, if you don't know what you're talking about, those phone calls don't mean anything. So you can look at somebody who does 10 deals a year, but if they are dialed in and that's what they choose to, how they choose to conduct their business and they choose to do less number of deals per year because they're participating in local boards, on committees, doing things like this, talking about real estate, educating people, I would argue that that's a much better agent than somebody who might do 50 or 100 deals a year. They're dialed in.
It's possible. So like, how would that happen though? Like, people are more likely to be dialed in as an independent contractor because it's their business versus an employee.
Yeah, I think that what it comes down to is the oversight from the managing broker. So a brokerage, when you have agents that are independent contractors, you walk a very thin line as to what you can require of them versus what you could require of someone as an agent who is an employee, right, Saul? So you're talking about a big difference between what you can exercise as a managing broker. You can't even require an agent to come to a meeting because you're an independent contractor. You can't dictate when they show up for things, what they do with their time, where they spend their time, all of those things. So it's a really crummy balance to say we have to make sure these people are really trained to know what they're doing and invested in the business because that's going to make them a better agent. But in doing that, we can't require any of these other things over here that you need to get to that point.
It doesn't make any sense, right?
It makes no sense.
It makes no sense. So here the broker is responsible.
But not really.
No, really. If you,
they are really, but
if you sold a piece of property under my broker's license and a buyer or seller sued you, guess what?
You're getting sued.
I know, you're going down.
They're middle management.
Right. And so, but you can't. So I say, well, the one thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure everybody comes to meetings on Monday. We're going to train. I can't make you do that. As a matter of fact, we are taught that we should be very careful and not even indicate that there's anything because we're afraid that the IRS might come in and classify you as an employee.
Can it be part of it can be part of the independent contractor agreement, right?
No, then you're not an independent contractor.
Right.
I can't say that you're an independent contractor, but
you have to be here on every Monday at 10 a.m. for a meeting. You have to tour every Friday from 10 to 2.
Well, what if
you've got to shadow this guy from that time to that time?
We require you to turn your files in at some time, and they have to be completed files, and they have to have all the signatures on them. And right.
But what if we? Do you think that? Well, so is the definition of customer service? Do you agree with Rachel? Is that like how you're defining it too?
I would almost say customer experience versus customer service. I look at customer service, maybe it's because of working in other businesses where customer service is calling in and taking care of orders and things like that. That's a little bit different than customer experience. If I'm going to hire an agent, I want to know that that agent knows what the heck they're doing. And that to me is going to lead to an overall better customer experience than somebody who knows how to handle an email or return a phone call. Of course, that stuff's important too. However, I want to know that they know what they're doing. They're going to ask me a question. I want to know that they've got the answer or at least know how to get it, and they'll get back to me with it.
Right.
So now part of the appeal over the years of getting into real estate was I can do whatever I want.
Right.
Right. I mean, that's part of the appeal. And part of the appeal for brokers was being, I can hire people, I can capitalize on their. And so every time this idea even comes up, the people that lobby against it are the existing real estate industry. Right, push back on this idea. Now, IRS comes at us and says, we want, our states come after us and say, we think you're need. As a matter of fact, even though you're not an employee, we still have to pay workers' comp, right? On because for workers, so they just didn't take it far enough. The broker has to pay workers' comp, but when it comes to being able to tell an agent what to do in their practice, they really can't be too restricted.
But there's a lot of ways to be successful in real estate and help your clients and provide a good customer experience. There's a lot of ways to do that.
There are, but we've been trying those for years.
Yeah, look where we are.
Well, yeah,
we're still talking about it.
So then what about
45 years and it's like hadn't gotten any better.
Right. So why do we keep trying to, I mean, I understand what you guys are saying. Like, you're saying that if we're employees instead of independent contractors, you feel that the training could be managed better, which would, and the people that weren't getting it would be fired quicker. Is that what we're saying?
Hiring, even in the hiring
Fired
process.
and fired
process.
quicker. But what about if instead, hear me out, we had no brokers and we did still do training and stuff, and it was just part of the process of getting your license, as well as like maybe higher accountability on the back end, like if there was something went wrong.
Well, so don't we have all broker states? We've got some states where that's the only one license, broker license.
We
right?
did.
But there's still those brokers then would still be working under an office though, right? Or like under a
Yeah, I
national
thought they were
franchise of some
still
sort, right?
under,
Well,
yeah.
but there's one license, right? All broker, I don't remember which ones, but they're like all broker states. It doesn't solve the dilemma.
Right.
Right? And the dilemma is we can't mandate what needs to be mandated to have an effective brokerage firm.
We can't do it because we're not making it part of the license. But what if we made it part of obtaining the license? Like getting the license is way too easy. It's way too easy. And there's too many people that can get it. We don't even agree on how a realtor is. People have their license that are not even practicing real estate. Well, maybe, right?
Well, that's an interesting thing. So you can get a real estate license. It then entitles you to do a number of different things.
Right.
Right. And you're licensed to do it anywhere in the state.
Right.
Which might not be the smartest thing for somebody to do.
True.
To sell real estate in an area in which they're not familiar, but the state doesn't erase it. Get this license, you're licensed to sell real estate.
How many, yeah, there's so many people that have a license that aren't even. So what if it was like you had different levels of licensing where it was like, okay, if you just are, and that dictated the trading.
Well, you can have something like that. And I think we had it in California, at least for mineral oil and gas, and that's endorsements on a license.
Okay.
Right. So you could set up
like
a license.
Insurance.
Yeah, where you get an endorsement, where you can sell commercial real estate. You have to pass another test, where you right,
where you get like you could be dual agency and you
have to some kind of endorsement. I remember in California it was mineral oil and gas brokers. You had to get a real estate license, and you had to get a separate endorsement to be able to handle mineral oil and gas. And so that's another way it could be handled. But
would you equate that to the designations that we currently have, or would you say it would be something? So I guess designations still would fall underneath we already have a general license. So you're talking about not being licensed to do commercial unless you're licensed to do
unless
commercial.
You're licensed. Or and again,
Gotcha.
you could maybe not call it a license. For mineral oil and gas, we always called it an endorsement.
An endorsement, right?
By the state, right? Because this
Right.
is in the licensing venue, not on the.
But I think it also does have to be like not just that you pass the test, but then you pass the test and you have to do a certain number of transactions in a certain period of time or you lose it.
That's a possibility. It depends how much control you want to give the government, and
right.
And so in the
I mean, wait, I'm the czar.
Well, then you can do it.
Am I giving you control of my business?
Yeah.
In the securities industry, you had to have, back when I had securities licenses, you had to be active in the securities industry. And if you weren't selling securities, then your the NASD would say you can't sell securities anymore.
I mean, that we should do some level of that too. Like if you have different levels of licensing, like if all you are is if you're an assistant, but you want to be a licensed assistant, but you're not going to be doing like any sales activities, that's one license. If you're going to be an investor and you only want to be representing yourself where you cannot represent others, that maybe is different or something like that. You know what I mean? And then you have to be able to lose it also. So if you are an active real estate agent, like, and you meet these parameters, then it has to be like a continual, you're active, like what does active mean, right? Like a certain number of deals in a period of time. Or you drop down to the.
Well, so that's an interesting point you bring up. Real estate license to me does not necessarily mean real estate sales. This frustrates me. Well, that's a part of what it is. This frustrates me with the National Association of Realtors. The National Association of Realtors is not the National Association of people who sell real estate. It's the National Association of people who are licensed in the real estate area, of which there are many things you can do. And you're right, you can start to segment it. I call it endorsements, but you could say, okay, you want to be a real estate counselor?
Mm-hmm.
Then you get the license to be a real estate counselor. You want to be a real estate salesperson, then you get the license to be a real estate salesperson. You want to be a title officer, then you get that right. And you can do these, or you get one license and then you get these endorsements on that license and progress. That's another way to do it. But again, the simplest way, we just ask for one, simple, pass one law, change it, make people responsible, make people, brokers who hire people, responsible for the success of those people.
What do you think would happen? Would we have more or less realtors?
I think we'd have less.
Would they have to be licensed then? No.
No, they have to be licensed. You'd have to go to work and get a license. Well, here's the deal. You wouldn't go to work and get a license unless you knew there was somebody who would hire you. And now it's not because you can fog a mirror that they hire you. It's they hire you because they interviewed you and they say, you know what, you got a lot going for you. You'd be good in real estate sales. They maybe even sponsor you to take the exam.
It just feels like it could go wrong. It's not, I guess it ruins this, it feels like it ruins the spirit of the industry.
Well, it's different, that's for sure. But when a paradigm shifts, right? And we're talking about paradigm shifts in the industry. And while we're shifting a lot of stuff, maybe we ought to look at this as well.
I don't like it. I don't know.
If in fact we believe that consumers are not well served. If we believe that consumers are well served and there's only sometimes that they're not, then maybe the current model works.
So, but maybe it's like, okay, so what if the ideas like get kind of smashed together? So like, there's so many people that want to start off in real estate and they want to assist somebody or they want to be on a team or whatever before, and they consider that like a training, like an apprenticeship. So what if you started off at like one of these companies where you're training, right? You're an employee, all this stuff. And then at some point, there's an option now, you can still like be your own broker, basically, right?
Well, what if you had to go to work for a brokerage firm before you could sit for a license?
No, I think that's,
what if there were criteria?
We absolutely should do that. It's so stupid that you get all this, you can do all this and pay, and you don't even know what the hell you're doing. It's dumb.
Well, I do think that there's a lot of people that go into take the class, take the test, get licensed, and have no idea what they're getting licensed to do.
Zero idea.
That's for sure.
Or what it all entails.
And
so
I think
there's a lot of people, hey, I'm going to go get my license and I'm going to do this. Like, well, do you know, having done it for 17 years now, let's talk about what that really means, you know, and what your life is going to be like once you do this.
Yeah. So you're talking about an apprenticeship.
That's what it is. It's just a state sanctioned.
Yes, that's
right.
What I'm saying.
All right. I know. That's what we're talking about. I'm saying the system's already there. If we just made brokers make those people employees, then we'd be one more step. Now I
I still want to be able to have my own company at some
as long as you get to
right?
become a broker. If you get to become a broker, you can have your own company.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I've done.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm my own employee.
You are.
Do you think here's a question for you? Do you think
you
that
still
agents
should be accountable though, Rachel? Like anybody that has, you still should be able to, there's needs to still, right? Like still a level of in the business if you're a broker in this model.
Oh, sure. I mean, it
not
depends
necessarily.
on.
Not necessarily. Think about it. Now, when I got my real estate license, I never heard of prospecting. I didn't know what that I didn't think I'm going to get my real estate license so I can just
open the phone book.
Dedicate myself to selling properties to other people. When I got my real estate license, it was because I wanted to buy real estate. I wanted to be active. I didn't want to have to work for anybody else. Right. I got a sales license, and within 2 years, I said, I'm going to get a broker's license so I can open my own shop. And it wasn't about picking a farm area or going back to my sphere of influence. It was about looking for properties for myself. And if I found somebody who was interested, we would do that. If somebody called in off the sign. So the intention was to get back then for a lot of people to get into real estate was to get into real estate really as an investor. And a license
there's a lot of that too.
Way to do it. And you also, you bought every property at least back in that day, 3% right, because you could get the commission because there's always this commission involved. And so if I had a broker's license, I could handle my own transaction and rightfully ask for that commission, as opposed to I'm sending you my cousin, right? And I want a referral fee out. No, I could practice real estate. I could sell real estate. I could eliminate the commission.
But if you're talking
I'm only eliminating it on me.
But if you're talking about raising the level of the industry, and you're saying the way to do that is to have the brokers responsible and make people employees, but you can also then be your own broker,
As long as
then you
broker's
negate
license.
everything that you were just fighting for.
No,
because not everyone will want to get a broker's license. Not everyone will want that liability. But that leads me to another question too, then, is if you have a bunch of agents, do you think an agent licensee is going to be more cognizant of what they're doing and more aware of how they're acting through a transaction if they are their own managing broker, where they are personally responsible for themselves, as compared to if they are working under a managing broker who is the one taking on the liability?
So
do you think that's ultimately in a roundabout way is going to help raise that level of awareness, all that kind of stuff?
I think if the broker has to pay, somehow there's some skin in the game for the broker, they're going to be more careful. And
that's saying, like, that the parents should be responsible for their kids. Like, if their teenager goes out.
That's how the license law is set up right now, though. But that's how the license law is set up. Yeah.
Yeah. If my agent goes out and does something and
goes rogue,
I'm going to get sued.
Yep.
Yeah, but it obviously doesn't happen enough, or else that would have changed the way brokers hire, and they don't. They just hire.
Now that takes me back to one of the things we said initially, is I'm not so sure that the public believes they're that disserved. You know, that they're that dissatisfied.
They do, though. There are surveys out there, and maybe they don't call it customer service. They call it like communication. They would not use the same agent that they used before. They're generally like, I feel like in general, there's a large portion of people that think they can do it on their own better. Or
yes, I would agree.
Or they
those can be negative experiences. I mean,
the chances of sure a lot of people having a bad experience is high
until they've done a deal with me.
Obviously, you're fabulous.
Right now, you're saying that it's high.
Yes,
the possibility, right?
No, I think
because there is no accountability from someone else telling them that they should be doing X, Y, and Z.
I don't think it's because of the accountability. I think part of it could be the accountability. Like, look at all this "what would you do" stuff that we talk about.
You know what? It blows my mind every time we hang up, and it's like, did somebody not realize that this was a serious problem?
Well, it's not, because nobody gets in trouble.
I think it depends on where you are. You know, where I'm at, I sit on the professional standards committee in Main Street organization of realtors. And I was recently involved in a hearing through the Chicago Association of Realtors. The experience between the two of those is apples and oranges as you could get. And I think if the hearing that happened through the Chicago Association of Realtors happened through the Main Street organization of Realtors, the experience would have been completely different. The outcome would have been different. It would have been an entirely different ball of wax. So I think it depends on where you are. I think it depends on the staff of the organization, of the board that you're working under, the quality of people that you have on those committees, and how strongly they feel about kind of help raising that bar.
That same thing, that would be the same if everybody was an employee under different brokerages, right?
Not necessarily, because in this particular situation, you know, there are different brokerages involved, and some of them are based, you know, on employee model base, and some of them are traditional. So in my experience, it hasn't been all that different between the two.
Yeah, so you get back to what's the issue, and to me, the issue is everything that people complain about. There's really not a whole lot we can do about it because there is no accountability structure. Right.
We're self-policing it. So it just depends on how far does your board and your volunteers in that board, how serious do they take that, and how dialed in are they?
Yeah, and you know what? You can exist in the real estate industry without being a member of your board.
You're talking about real estate. No,
we're talking about the board.
So you don't have to join the board to sell real estate.
Well, you do in Illinois.
You do.
Well, to have access to the, but you know what? I bet you don't. I don't want to do this, but I bet that if I went to Illinois, I could find plenty of properties for sale. There's enough resources for me to find out what's available without going to an MLS to find out what's available. Zillow, Realtor.
Well, you would have to be your own broker, or go with a brokerage that doesn't require it.
I could go to the Redfin site.
Yeah.
I log into the Redfin site, which is a brokerage firm, and they got a direct feed from the broker. So I'm not sure that in today's environment, and this is something that organized real estate will look at when the DOJ comes after them and says, well, this is a monopoly and you have to belong to the MLS or you can't sell real estate. I'd say maybe that's not true today. Listings are a commodity out on the web today. They're everywhere.
But you wouldn't be selling it as a licensee. You'd be wholesaling it or being an investor or something like that.
Well, I would say as a licensee, I could get a license and not join my board of realtors and not join the MLS and still sell real estate.
But I don't, because, well, in our state, I don't know about Illinois, but in our state, in order to take the test, you have to be at a brokerage. Actually, both of my states.
Well, I'm using the example. I have a broker's license.
Oh, as a broker, yeah, that's why I said you have to be your own broker, right?
So if I'm a broker, I can move to any state.
You could.
And not join the MLS and still sell real estate.
You could, yeah.
And I would still have as much access to market availability as anybody else who's a member of the MLS.
Well, yeah.
It'll take me a little bit more work to find it.
Difficult.
Are you going to get paid, Saul? Since the MLS is the offer of compensation?
That's an interesting thing. So yeah, I would use a buyer broker contract that allows me to earn commission one way or another.
Right. I'm amazed too at how many times I've been contacted by people outside of the MLS. I end up because it's an odd situation that happens, but it's happened enough where I've, pulled up license numbers, looked at it, they're not in the MLS. They go through the entire process and never worry about whether or not they've never inquired, never discussed payment, never anything. And I'm thinking to myself, are they thinking they're working for free or are they getting paid by the buyer? And that's not my business. But here's a question that came in too from Lori. Do you think that it would make any difference if you, in order to be able to sell real estate, if you've owned real estate in the past? Like would it be better customer experience overall if in order to be licensed to sell real estate, you have owned it in the past?
Yeah, I think that's individual. That would just depend on the individual. Making it a criteria, are you thinking making it criteria to get licensed? I don't know that's
right.
And I don't think it matters because I think like customer service is kind of like how we were talking about before about ethics. It's like you either have it or you don't. Like you can learn a little bit of customer service and you can understand like what to do, what not to do, but you're either like one of those people that wants to provide an experience where you're pleasing others and your customers, or you don't give a shit.
Right. And there's a couple of agents I've worked with over the years who, for whatever reason, never owned property, and they're fantastic to work with.
I rent now.
Right. Exactly. And you know what? Because you travel, you don't want to be tied down. You don't want to worry about whether or not a pipe bursts when you're not home.
Well, I still have to worry about the rental.
Still got to worry about that kind of sorta, but it's just it's a very different thing. You know, if you're somebody that likes to travel, or maybe somebody that isn't going to be setting roots down for a while.
Yeah, I don't think that is. So I think what we've narrowed it down to is in order to enhance the customer experience and also our colleagues' experience, right?
That's a big piece of it to me is the other realtors that are practicing with.
Absolutely.
It's a huge piece. I mean, yeah, I never really thought about that, but that is a big piece.
Your reputation in the industry among your peers is just as big of an impact on your career and your book of business as your sphere is in your clients and your customers.
Right.
I mean, there's been times where I've had deals that have come together strictly because I have a great relationship with the other agent and vice versa.
Right. But do we think that it could be something like where there are companies that have employees and have standards in place that pay those licensees or whatever they're called, coupled with the ability to also then like get your broker's license at some point, and also standards in place for all of those where you would lose your ability to do the job if you did not meet the standards.
So those are all possible options.
Yeah.
Right. Possible criteria.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure where all of those things take us. Right. So we can look at each one. Having to own real estate, I'm not sure what benefit.
Yeah.
That right. Because that's a learning.
I think she may be talking about having gone through it.
Yeah.
To like experience it, which could work for some people because they're those type of people, but for others, I don't know if that would matter.
So this is an important piece to me, and that is that we keep talking about taking the friction out of the transaction.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what everybody talks about, but nobody defines what that means. Taking the
Mm-hmm.
friction out of the transaction. Well, here's what it means. It means reducing the number of people that touch the transaction.
Yes.
That's what it means.
Let's do that. There's
Right?
I
way
can't
too
argue
many
with that
people
either.
involved.
That's taking the friction out of the transaction.
Right.
And so that's what's happening with technology is we're getting it to where fewer and fewer people are going to need to touch that file as it progresses through its cycle. And so one of the way a real estate, often talk about, let's talk about the future. Let's talk about really important, the real estate consumer of the future.
Mm-hmm.
What does the real estate consumer of the future look like? What does the real estate industry of the future look like? What does the real estate brokerage of the future look like? And what does the role of an agent look like?
Yeah.
And if we're trying to get the friction out of the transaction, that means we're trying to reduce the hands, which means the costs are going to come down.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big push by the FTC and the DOJ. It's cost coming down. Now, nobody has.
But if cost comes down, you have to standardize it. And then but this problem with standardizing a real estate transaction is that it's a highly emotional experience.
Yeah,
it's not going to McDonald's to get a burger. These are people's lives.
I see people now making offers on property, waiving inspections and never even seeing them. So I don't know how much of an emotional experience it is.
No, but they're emotional. No, it's the reason why they're moving, right? It's maybe they got a better job or it's not the actual buying of the house. It's the reason why people are.
But I'm not so sure you need as many people in the real estate industry to satisfy that. And so you've got way too many people chasing way too few dollars in the real estate industry.
Agreed. Agreed.
And part of the problem is the compensation structure and the employment structure. And so this is Stefan. You ever read Stefan's stuff? I've known Stefan for a million years. Stefan Swanepoel and T360. And this is his 2020 almanac, which gives us the 2019 numbers. But I didn't want to pay $200 to get them right. But it's interesting. And I'll just take the rates, and nobody does this as good as Stefan does. He rates brokerage firms. And so this is the top 100 brokerage firms, and he rates them by transaction size.
Okay.
That's one way to rate them, huh?
Sides, yeah.
Transaction size. He ranks them by volume.
Okay.
That's another way. And then he ranks them by agent count.
Okay.
So three very important things: transaction size, volume, and agent count.
None of that has to do with customer service.
Well, wait, listen.
I'm waiting. I'm listening.
So number one was Home Services of America. Number one, 330,000 transaction sites.
It's a lot.
With 43,000 agents.
Oh, wow.
Now, number two was Realogy. Now, I know it's a lot of different companies, but Realogy, 325,000 transaction sites, only 4,000 less, but 52,000 licensees.
How many transaction sites?
325,000. 352,500, 52,000.
So that's about 6 deals per person.
Now, number three was Howard Hanna, 101,000 transaction sides and 8,746 agents. But this is the one that got my attention. Number six was Redfin.
Okay.
53,000 transaction sides with 1,500 agents.
That's 35 units an agent.
So they use that employee-employer model.
Yes.
Yeah.
Redfin does. And what I'm seeing is fewer agents required to complete a greater number of transaction sites, which means more profitability for the broker until people finally figure this out, right? And they start squeezing.
But in all reality, let's talk about that a little bit, because in all reality, when you have a Redfin agent as a part of a transaction, that is one agent, but they have about 5 other people that are looped into all of those emails and all of that stuff. So once you get past that first point there, it's no longer the agent. Now it's the transaction coordinator. Now it's the closer. Now it's this person. Now it's that person.
Right. But
so
they're doing
while
it
the
all
agent
with,
number is
that is
lower.
the agent number. That's the agent in
Right.
That's the full agent count. So
Right,
I
right.
understand the business model is they got different, that makes sense to me. Get somebody, it's like assembly line, get somebody to learn how to answer the phone, and then you can teach them
But
the
does
next
that,
step.
yes, and part of that will increase customer service, but also like with their model, if you're a buyer, there's no consultation. You
Correct.
go look at houses based on availability, your availability, and you could get, you look at 3 different houses, you get 3 different agents. That
Right.
is the exact, I mean, I think for most buyers, they need a consultant.
So they're going to figure that out. They're going to figure that out. They're still trying to figure out how this works, and they're going to find
Right.
their way, right? And I think that really they're the real estate model of the future. I think people really need to look at this employee-employer thing, and for one reason is the government has always been against the real estate industry when it comes to this, always.
And why are they so against it? What is their big driving reason for being so against it?
Revenues. How many realtors do you know that don't pay their quarterlies?
All of them.
I bet you know a lot.
A whole lot.
And so agents
they're going to come back to get you
anyway.
They're going to come back.
They get more money when we don't pay quarterlies because they charge fees.
So this is so the tax system is pay as you go. So why would the government want people to be employees? Because they get their fair share, pay as you go. By leaving an independent contractor, at the best they get it quarter to quarter, and then in the real estate industry, hardly at all, because few real estate agents that I've known over the years are diligent when it comes to quarterlies.
Right.
So that you've got the government's always wanted
to
make you employees, and we've fought this for NAR. So if you like the structure the way it is now, with
donate to RPAC.
You need to thank NAR and your state association and your local associations, because they're the ones that have maintained this. Because every time it comes up, they're the only organizations that push back against this.
Right, that's pushing back.
Right.
This is I think what we've learned here today. We probably should wrap up. It's been a while, but it's a big topic. I feel like every time we do a Better Call Saul episode, it's like this big topic we could talk about for days. We should do like go somewhere to like Fiji or something for like a week.
Do it on location. I'm in.
And just like solve all of the problems of real estate.
All of the problems of the real estate world from Fiji.
Really?
We need space to think, you know?
You're right. I'd never come back.
Maybe that would solve the problems if we never came back.
Wouldn't it?
But let's wrap up. Well, you kind of already said it, but give us your final thoughts again, Saul, on how you think, what is the most impactful change that we can make to increase the customer and colleague experience in a real estate transaction?
Now, and I'm not saying I'm an advocate for this, but what I'm saying is, if there was one thing that I believed would make customer service better in the real estate industry, that would be to have more people directly accountable, and in particular, the broker more accountable for the training and the experience that the people that work for that broker provide to the consumer. And there's a lot of ways you can do it, but if you wanted to really get people to focus on that right now, the one thing I would do is change the employment model.
All right, Rachel.
And to piggyback off of what he said, I would actually absolutely say too, that to have brokers that are hiring and bringing on licensees take the time to really make a smart hire instead of just somebody that's going to fog a mirror. Because in the long run, their liability is going to be far less. They're going to have better production. They're going to have a better environment altogether, rather than having somebody that's just coming in to fog a mirror and pay their $75 a month. So making smarter hires, then you're going to have people that are going to want to come to those monthly meetings, want to participate in training, want to get involved with the board, want to learn. Otherwise, it comes down to the person you're hiring.
Yeah, and I would say making like some type of an apprenticeship part of obtaining the license. I think that's
which, Jennifer, I have to say, you're right. That's the current model. It's just the employment shell that they put around it doesn't work real well because of the independent contractor lack of control.
Right. I get that.
Right, but what it really is supposed to be, right, like a trade almost, where you've got people who mentor other people.
Right.
We do it through a license where we have a license, a senior license to a more junior license. That's kind of like being an apprentice.
Yeah.
Right. And I think for that to work, there has to be more benefit to the person who's doing the mentoring and the training, because right now, the way it is, they are asked to do so much and put so much effort into a new agent. There is there's nothing in it for them.
Right. I think it has to happen before the license too. Like as a part of
or as part of that process, maybe.
As a part of the process. Yeah. Like you can't, I don't know. Well, Rachel, if people have a referral for you in Chicago or they want to get a hold of you, what is the best way?
Best way to reach me is by cell phone via phone or text at 630-542-8688 or on Facebook at Rachael Real Estate. And then thank you to Aaron and Lori, who also were participating in our live chat. So you guys can follow up and kind of see what their comments were as we went through the discussion today.
Yeah, thanks, ladies. And Saul, what is a great way to get a hold of you?
You can send me an email, saul@bettercallsaul.realtor. You can go to thedataadvocate.com, or you can join our Facebook group, Real Talk, which is the oldest online real estate community in existence. We founded it in 1994.
That's awesome.
And it's still going. It only has about 5,000 people, but we're trying to build it back up.
No, you have 10.
We have 10?
Yeah, you have 10,000.
Oh, really? Great. See how it grows?
I just looked today. I was like, wow, that's a lot.
It's an old group of people. So one of the nice things about that group is we've got people who've been participating with us in online communications for 25 years.
Yeah.
And they're people who like to share, and they're people who are knowledgeable, and
it's like information. We don't talk about like, what closing gift should I give my millennial buyers? Oh my God.
You know what? The most training and the best information I ever got through the course of, coming through, real estate for the last 16 years was from an older agent who used to be a managing broker of an office, retired and went to sales kind of part-time just to get out of the managerial part of it. We used to sit in the back corner of the office and talk about what if this, what if that, what do you do for this, what do you do for that? And she passed away last year, but I still over the last year or so, it's like, God, what would I do? What would Barb say? Like if Barb was here, what would she tell me to do? So that's going to the people who have been in this business for a very long time, who really know what they're doing, are a wealth of information.
Exactly.
And a fantastic resource. And they're happy to talk about it. They're happy to help.
They are.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you guys being on for another episode of Better Call Saul. Thank you, Saul. Thanks, Rachel.
Thanks, Saul. Thanks, Jen.
Good to see you guys.
Bye.
You too.